Let's talk about the H Hub, which was first known in my days as the Influencer Collective, became the Hub, the H Hub. So tell us a little bit, what is it, how it started, what was the mission behind the Hub?
Well, I worked at a big ad agency and I learned how to tell stories for brands. I also saw that brands were trying to be faster and create content faster and cheaper, and that agencies weren't doing a good job at that. And this is 8 years ago. Then I went and worked at a startup and I was head of content. I was head of like building their brand through content. And this was now 6 years ago, 7 years ago. That company promised me, to run a department. I'd have a whole team, a big budget, and they had, 40 million users, this company, of their app. It was pretty big. We were going to create a lot of content. And then the company had some bad shit happen, lost a lot of money very quickly. And they're like, cool, half the company's fired. We're not going to fire you because you just started, but you don't have a budget. You don't have a team. Like, just figure it out. And I'm like, so I call some friends and call in favors and da-da-da. I didn't know people like you. I had creative friends, 10, 15, 20 of them. And all the initial work, if you go and look back at that company's social feed, was just all my friends, just doing shit for $50 to help me out, right? And then I started hitting up people on Instagram because Instagram had just gone from being private only, which I don't even know if you remember, but 6-7 years ago, the Instagram was just like I had to request you like you do now for private accounts. And they opened it up where you could like have a public account. And it was so weird. It was like, because Instagram back then was like, you'd post pictures of your family, your dog, your meals. It was very personal. So it's like, why
It
would
was
I
an
want,
extension of Facebook, kind of.
yeah, it's like, why would I want everyone in the whole world to be able to just like find this shit? Like, it's all like where I live and like personal stuff, right? So I was like, ew, like I wouldn't do that. But all of a sudden, there are kids that have like 3,000 followers, 10,000 followers. I'm like, that's so many people, like fast, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of them were doing it through photography. They'd shoot really beautiful images and then people would follow them. And 10,000, now that's like normal or nothing. But back then it was like, whoa, like, because I had 800, which were like close friends of mine from college and high school. So I started reaching out to these people and was shocked when these like celebrities, I thought they were like big deals, were just like 23-year-old kids who worked at like Starbucks or pizza delivery or fucking whatever. They weren't making any money off of this following. They
Yeah.
just had talent. And I would just find them and I'd just be like, I'll pay you $300 if you do this shoot. And they'd be like, absolutely. Because that meant that they could skip a shift at Starbucks and do what they love. And so I started building a relationship with 10, 20, 30. One of them in particular became my like right-hand man. And he actually came to work at the company and helped me build out this network. So it was like 50 people. The founder of the company where I was working, or the CEO, sorry, was like, this is really cool what you're doing. I totally see it. I see how big it could get. How much do you need to like really do it right next month? Because remember, I had like $5,000 a month of budget. So
Yeah.
I'm like 25, 30 grand. He's like, okay, I can find 30 grand. Like, I'll give you 30 grand. So, my budget just multiplied by 6. I plan a trip to LA. I plan a trip to New York with my right-hand guy, Jacory. And we go to LA and we have a sick house and we invite all of these influencers. And now we're talking big. They have like 100,000 followers, which back then was like crazy.
Huge.
One of them I really vibed with. I'm like, dude, you should come to New York with us. He's like, okay. So I pay for a plane ticket with that budget, fly him to New York, meet a whole bunch of people, one of whom was Pojo. He posted on his Instagram, he had like 200,000 followers, like, I'm in New York, like, who wants to shoot? And a 16-year-old Pojo shows up. That's how I met her. And it was just amazing, like the amount of stuff we were making, the quality we were making for 30 grand. And I'd seen budgets at the big ad agency for 30 grand a month where it was like some like 22-year-old girl on her iPhone, like taking shitty photos, and a big company was paying. And I'm like, for 30 grand, I could have like 10, 15 of these kids shoot amazing shoots. Not one person takes shitty iPhone photos. Like, there's an opportunity here. Holy cow.
Yeah.
So then the invoices come in from Pojo and from all the people. $300, $500, $1,000, $300, $200. Like, it's like 30 people for 30 grand. And the company was struggling, and the CEO is like, I can't pay it.
No, I didn't know that. Never.
And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I've basically built all these relationships. They all trust me. I've become friends with these people. I can't like not pay, like they need this to pay rent. Like they trust me. What the fuck are you talking about? It's like, we can't pay it. So he defaulted. So I was actually on vacation. I was with my dad, and I was like, listen, I know this is crazy. I can't I can't do these people wrong. It's not like I'm like blowing off like a big company or something that'll be fine. These are kids that like are gonna be in a bad spot if I don't pay them the grand that they thought was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Can I borrow 30 grand? So my dad said yes, and I paid the money. And I went to the CEO and I'm like, you're gonna pay me this money back. I don't care how long it takes. I will work for the company for free. I'll just take equity in the company. So I owned over 1% of this business that was worth $40 million at the time. So, you know, what is that? I guess that's not that much. It's 40 grand. Sorry, no, it's $400,000. So I had $400,000 worth of equity in this company. Yeah, right. And I was working for free. And I did it for like 2 months, 3 months, and kept going with this. And he paid me the money back, but it was very clear that this company was dying. So I quit, and I had the 30 grand, and I was in Berlin shooting something, and I was jet lagged, and I wake up at like 3 a.m, and I have this idea called H, which is like all these kids, all these brands, and I can be the one to connect.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have a B tattoo all about like connection, all about the circles and bringing people together. That's like my mission in life.
Yeah.
So I call my dad. It's 2 a.m. in Berlin. It's whatever that means, 8 a.m. in New York. Did I do that right? I don't know, whatever. I call him, and I'm known as having crazy ideas in my family, and usually get the like, oh yeah, like, you know, here's James again, like being the crazy B guy, you know, has all these nut, you know, but my dad was like, you know, like this, I see it, like it makes sense to me, you know, which kind of surprised me, right? Because it's sort of a modern idea and disruptive of the way things used to be, but he got it. And so I'm like, can I keep the 30 grand? Like, will you be my first investor? And he said, yes. So that's what I started the company with. And I quit, and I just started, you know, and it was really just with like the 40 or 50 photographers we'd made relationships with.
Yeah.
I started reaching out to a few brands. We started getting some work. Then we built the software, the hub, you know, and you know the rest of the story. But
I think that like for me, so on the other side, you know, even before I work at the hub, I came to New York in 2017. I didn't really know like what I wanted to do. So I was doing like a little bit of modeling, a little bit of photography. And I know the hub because you guys were organizing those like the hub meet, you know, and it was like a place where you have like photographer and you have models and these people, you know, just like work together. It was usually in like amazing locations. I remember the one that I went to, I think was in Central Park, and I met like a lot of friends that I'm still friend with to this day, you know, like amazing like creatives. And I know that the hub to like the creative community was very respected because also like your platform was not only about like making money out of photography, but also like really like celebrating the art, like celebrating, you know, like people's creativity. And it was to have like your picture featured on the hub page was such a big thing at the time. It was like, oh wow, like we made it to the hub, what the fuck, you know, like because yeah, there was like, I don't know who was running the page at the time, if it was you or someone else, but like a really great eye, you know. And it was more than connecting with brands, I think that it was very like empowering to connect with other creatives, because there's like this thing when you're an artist, when like you really lack this like self-confidence, you know, like you said, you work like your day job at Starbucks and you do a little bit of photography on the side, and like you can feel that you're good at it, but at the same time like you have no one to really like validate you and validate what you're doing. And that's what the hub did so good, you know, is like connect you with other people who can tell you like, no dude, like you're sick, like you have to like make something out of it.
Yeah,
um
I appreciate you saying all that. Like we gave out 15,000 of these hats, and when we sent them out, we'd send them with a little thing I wrote that said, under this message lies a hat, but under this hat lies a message. And it
yeah,
was sort of this like poem almost about what you're talking about, that like if you see someone in this hat, if you're going to wear this hat,
yeah,
you're open to collaborating. You're like, we're all in the same team. It's like a community. We have each
exactly.
other's backs. We're not competition. We're not like, I'm not jealous of you. This is like, we're here to help each other. And they're like, when you look at it from a business perspective and a less emotional one, building a marketplace, an H, where you have supply and demand, you have, Uber drivers and passengers, you have photographers and brands. The conventional wisdom is you have to start somewhere, and the other side will be frustrated because they're waiting. So I could sell in all the brands but not have any photographers, or I could sell in all the photographers and not have any brands. And
Yeah,
one way or another, I'm pissing people off. And so my solution was, I'm going to start with the photographers and build a community. And
exactly.
the value proposition isn't work, which is probably what they ultimately want. It's validation. And
Hmm.
the key insight you just put your finger right on, which was insecurity, something I've felt my whole life just as a human, but definitely as a like a creative person.
Yeah.
Like, how can I not take advantage of, but how can I show that I understand that it is a very lonely thing to be a creative person, and bring those people together to help each other feel seen. And one of my great regrets, Mizel, is like, just to switch analogies as I always do, you know, in some houses you have central heating. You turn on the heater and every room in the house goes. In other houses you have like a space heater that you have to take from like room to room to room. Startups don't have much money, so it's the equivalent of like, you have a small
Yeah.
space heater. It can't heat the whole house, so you just kind of bring it with you where you go. And if I had fundraised properly, been a little more disciplined in the beginning, and we'd raised $10 million, I could have kept the community alive, which is such an
Yeah.
important part of the story, and started building the software and started selling into brands. But instead, I've had to move the space heater from the creative community to building the software to brands. So I went in that order. And it's just because I didn't have enough money. And so the challenge has been, it's sad, right? Like, we don't have a community anymore. Like, this is
Yeah.
part of it, but it's gone now. It's not what it is anymore. The software is done and it's built. I have a one-person product team. I used to have 5 people, as you know, like building software. Right now it's one person. Now all of our focus is selling in brands and keeping brands happy and making money. And I hope one day I can do all three at once, but I really had to do the pieces. Um,
Hmm.
but you're right.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
no, like I resonate with that. I think that when I did my master's, you know, like one thing that really like marked me was like, you don't invest in products, you invest in people. And I think that the hub, you know, like it was they think that it was like beyond, yeah, it'd be just like beyond business, you know. It was like, oh, we feel understood as creative. And when I was working at the hub, like I definitely, I was a little like frustrated that like we had to kind of like sacrifice the community. But like you said, it's also like being realistic, was like, what can we do with what we have? So now my question is, what do you plan in the future? Like how do you plan to reconnect with your community, you know? Like how can you like give them a platform again where they feel like heard and understood? I know that the blog, I mean, I think that the H Hub, I don't know if it still exists, but the blog of the hub was like, you know, like very helpful in so many ways. You guys touch like tons of different like points of the life of a creative. So
It was an
what are the
amazing
things?
blog that grew. I mean, it grew very quickly because Shannon did such a good job on it, and it had 300,000 readers a month. It was like it was a proper publication. It was bigger than most blogs,
Yeah.
and it was just. But as you remember, we had 3 people at one point working on that blog. You know, I was probably spending 10
Mhm.
grand a month on that blog and not making a dollar
Yeah.
back. So how do I plan to return to the community? I think so. I started with the community, software brands. Now it's going to go back the other direction, which is,
Yeah.
you know, right now, today, and I'm proud of this. Like, I don't know, 60 to 100 people will make, the average photographer makes $48,000 a year in America. 60 to 100 people will make more than $48,000 a year on the hub alone,
Hmm.
in addition to whatever else they make side hustling, right? But, you know, like it's getting to be more people than like an agency could feed or whatever. It's getting to be like a thing. And one day I hope it's 10,000 people a year are like getting full-time work.
Is
So
it
that,
still a thing for the little guy, you know, like the little guy that came to the hub meets? Like, is the hub still a platform for these like these creatives, or do you now use the services of photographers who have like more elevated work, you know? Like, do you address still like the same demographic?
yeah, it's a great question. The answer is like, you know, no, the little guy isn't prioritized anymore because it's only the people that are good enough to impress clients.
Yeah.
I will say though that there's a hierarchy, right? Which is to say, like, most of the people that get the client work, as you know, are people with like 12 years experience. They live in Manhattan, da, 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 da. They have a fancy studio. They charge 5 grand a day rate,
Yeah.
right? And all of the people that I told you that were like feeding the 60 to 100 people, you know, maybe 1 or 2 of them are like that, but all of them, almost all of them are like, they live in a small little town outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. They like, you know, they're really young. They live in the middle of nowhere. They're a woman, not a man. They're a minority. Like they're people that would have been overlooked by the industry or not,
Mm.
like they wouldn't be getting this kind of work. And so that's something I'm proud of. So in the grand scheme of things, the little guy is winning, I think, because it's not the big fancy New York City or Los Angeles
Yeah.
production house photographer that's getting all the work. It's the everyman. But at least within the hub, you're right that like we have 40,000 people on the platform and only the most talented couple hundred get jobs right now. And that's
Do
sad.
you plan do you plan like to, you know, like start initiatives to like maybe help those the rest of the 40,000, like the 39,000 other photographer to actually, you know, get better in order to like get these opportunities that you post on your platform?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Again, I want to move backwards. So the first thing, like go in reverse order. So the first thing is like getting 500, 1,000, 10,000, you know, photographers work consistently, which, oh, by the way, means that we're making a lot of money as a business. If we're making a lot of money as a business, then we have extra money to invest in things that don't immediately make money. Last
Mm-hmm.
episode, we were talking about brand equity versus direct response.
Yeah.
As a startup, every dollar I spend, I need to know that a dollar is coming back pretty
It's
fucking
a yeah.
fast. But if you are a bigger company, you can spend a dollar and invest it in the future, knowing that you might make $10 in 10 years, but you're not going to make anything in between. Is that okay? So
Yeah.
the answer is once we are feeding enough photographers, we can start moving back. So then the next thing would be the software, making it better. I want to make more tools for creators. I really want to make it like basically everything you need to be a freelance photographer, which is to say health insurance, help with your taxes, getting work, finding models, finding locations. Like we talked last episode about reverse engineering a brand, all of the photographers that use us. And it's like, tell me about your problems. Like in your week, in your month, like tell me the worst part of your month. What sucks the most? It's
Yeah.
like, like keeping track of my calendar, or like I don't have health insurance or whatever. And we'll solve those problems one by one through software. And then last but not least, we'll go back to the community and reinvest in things like the blog, things like meetups, things like physical spaces. I've
Yeah.
been working with this guy who started a huge sort of like Soho house, but there are more of them in Scandinavia. He's bringing them to New York. And I'd
Nice.
love to have physical spaces in 3 or 4 key cities in the States, where if you're a member on the hub and you've done like a job or more, you get access to this space where you can like hang out, meet other creative people, charge your camera. We might have equipment that you can like rent for below market rate. We might have classes and seminars there, like, so this
Yeah.
is all what it would be if it's this huge ecosystem and it's healthy and so on. But I need the discipline of bringing the space heater around before I can afford the central heat.
Got it. Now, I guess my next question, I mean, as a former employee of the hub, like I've seen the company like completely change, like turn into something like the what it is today, like a platform when like brands can like directly hire creators. It was challenging. I just want you to like maybe like talk about this time, like how like the I guess like what was the biggest challenge at the hub, and like how did you survive it? Because I know that we were like in a pretty like tough position, and it seems that now the hub is like in a far better place because like you just like switch everything up. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, it was hard. It was hard for you, I'm sure. It's hard for, a lot of people lost their jobs. It was hard for me to hurt people that I cared about.
So, but what happened? What can you explain a little bit like what happened?
Yeah. So we had money, that had been invested into the business, millions of dollars. And uh, just like we're talking about, this is a big vision. It's a
Yeah.
big ecosystem. There's a blog and there's physical spaces and there's a marketplace and the all this stuff. And you know me, like my mind moves very quickly. So it's easy to get excited about all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And to understand how like it's like a puzzle. It's like, oh my God, wait, they all fit together. If the blog, like I can even see you getting excited about it. Like the blog was really cool and helpful. And I understand the role that meetups played. And I understand it all fits. It's all one story that fits together.
Yeah.
So I had some money, and so I was able to hire people, and I hired people to run a creative agency. I hired people to run a blog. I hired people to, like people were working on these meetups. People were building software. We were doing, 3, 4 things at once. So we had whatever it was, 15, 16 employees, some freelancers, like there were probably 20 people that were making most of their living, if not all of it, through the hub. We weren't making much money, all of the hard work you in particular were doing, that was most of the money coming in, which was like agency work. And I think
Yeah.
our best month we brought in 125, $150,000. It's a lot of money. But that same month, what you didn't know is we spent $300,000 because I'm
Mm-hmm.
paying the salary of all the product team to build the software. I paid for this meetup. I paid for this thing over here. Like it all adds up, right? So
Yeah.
cool. We brought in 150K, but we spent 300. That's a loss of 150 fucking $1,000. That's a down payment on a house or a fucking Ferrari a month.
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, okay, I could just like trim it, or I could go and try to keep up this breakneck pace and but choose to believe that all these things I'm doing are valuable. I need to keep doing all of these things. So I need more money from investors. I need millions and millions, maybe $10 million to pay for all of this to be built simultaneously so that the whole
Yeah.
thing works. So I don't know how much of this you remember or were aware of, but I did. And I was scared of this because I had only raised money from friends and family, people I knew, but I went out to like venture capitalists as a first-time founder that didn't know what the fuck he was doing. Maybe I still don't. And tried to raise millions and millions of dollars at tens of millions of dollars valuation. Like, here's my big company.
Yeah.
My first meeting went amazingly well, and I thought he was going to write a check, and I'm like, this is going to be easy. And we're friends to this day. He advises the company. Every meeting after that went, oh, so, comme ci, comme ça, or awful. And everyone, including the first guy, said, no. I have a slide in a deck that I show sometimes when I like do public speaking of all 39 emails saying no in different ways. Some of them were just like, thanks, James, not interested. Some of them were like, here are 3 paragraphs about why you suck. But 39 people that know what they're doing and are like professional investors are telling me my idea sucks. Or not that, but like that I'm.
Yeah, I don't think that was was it really the idea? Like, to me, I remember it vividly. It's funny, again, like as an employee, I remember when you went to all these meetings and I could see like how like stressed you would get, and like it was almost like panicking a little bit because all these people were also telling you different things about like what you should do in order to get that money, and like you were coming back to the office and you were like, everyone stop, we're doing this, but the thing is like you had like 4 meetings a week, and it's like us, I mean, me, I remember as an employee, like I was telling you, I was like, James, like it's never gonna work if we don't like try at least like one strategy for like a couple months, it's just, but I can understand, from your side, from your perspective, it was like you said, like all these employees at the time, we were 15, 16, and like all this money was just, like getting spent way faster than it was actually like coming in, and you were just like trying so hard to like find the one recipe, that is gonna be worth like the investment of these people. And that's kind of like how like everything like went down as well, like all these like VC, like it seems that they all had like their idea of like what you should do, and it kind of like made you lose your confidence, because I think that deep inside you know what you had to do, like in order to really like make this company worth like those big investment. But then you got like insecure because all these other people were telling you otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's a great read. I mean, like, don't forget, I was living in San Francisco. The company basically was based in New York, where you were working. I was in a relationship. I was really depressed. Like, I had a lot of shit going on. The analogy I sometimes give, which I think describes it pretty well, is like, I'm a chef. I have a vision. I know what I'm doing. I'm, like you say, like I know what I like.
Yeah.
I have all these people working in the kitchen helping me to make the dishes, and we're like enjoying it and it's fun. Like there was a time where like it was really, at least for me, fun. Like the hub was fun. It was like a beautiful place, right? Like it was cool what we were doing and believing in, right? And like that's what you wanted a startup, is to believe in something.
Yeah.
And someone, Elon Musk or something, says like that's the main difference between a startup and a company, is like how many people can you get in a room that believe the same thing, right? At big companies, like people have different goals, different things. They even think of the company differently. But something special about a startup is that like 15 people are their hearts beating together. It's like the same dream, the same vision, more or less. And there's beauty in that. So think of us all in the kitchen, right? And we're doing our thing and we're liking it. And you taste it. And you're like, oh, it's pretty good. Like we're getting good at this. We're getting better at cooking. I taste it. It's good. Everyone's happy. And then it's like, okay, we don't have like that many patrons, so we're not making that much money. And now even worse, there are critics in the, on the other side of that door. And you're still in the kitchen, prepping, working hard. And I cross the door and I go and sit down and I serve the dish. And the guy's like, I don't like it. And I don't like it because it's too salty. So I go back and I'm like, Mizel, less salt, less salt. And you're like, okay. And then I take it out to the next guy with less salt. And he's like, I don't like it because it has sauce on it. And I don't like sauce. And so I go back and I'm like, Mizel, we got to get rid of the salt. And sooner or later,
Yeah,
it's like, we don't even know what we're cooking anymore. We're not
exactly.
connected to what we're cooking, but you kind of have to, like, the critics write about you. And if they write bad shit, no one's going to come to the restaurant. So
Which
I,
is funny because like I feel that you were also at that time like reading a million books, and I'm sure you still do, you know, about like entrepreneurship and like those all those like success stories. And to me, because I read some of these books too, in all these stories, there's only like, you know, like one guy who believed in you, but never ever this company tried to please everyone. And I felt that's like that was maybe what you were trying to do, is like to please everyone. But in all success stories is like there's like this one investor who's taking the risk because he understands your vision and he understands the passion, and all the other ones are going to be like, fuck, we should have actually invested in that project, you know, like we just missed the opportunity of the century.
yeah, you're right. I mean, I think it's easy to tell that story in reverse. Like, oh, that one person, but when you're on meeting 37 out of 39
Mm-hmm.
and you've gotten all no's, it's pretty hard to like believe that, like,
Yeah.
right? Like when you're on meeting 3, you're like, yeah, like fuck those guys. The next one's going to be into it. But when you've gotten 37 or 38 or 39 no's, it's like, I don't know if a yes is ever coming. And then, but the real thing, Mizo, was just like time was passing and we had 500K in the bank or whatever. And we were just losing money. And so it's like, I was seeing, we were in a car zooming along and I saw the cliff in the distance. And I'm like, we're going to hit that cliff very, 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 very soon. And so
Yeah.
we experienced a very uncomfortable feeling of like, boom, like fired 6 people, boom, fired 3 more, boom, got rid of an office. Like, how can I make it so that instead of 3 months of life left, we have 6, we have 9?
Yeah.
So that's what I did. It was hard. It was painful. It was sad. It was sad because of the people that I hurt and like those individual conversations and decisions. It was sad because it meant kind of giving up on the whole, like, everything needs to be happening at once. This is going to be a big ecosystem dream. It was
Mm-hmm.
sad because I felt like a failure as like a founder, as a leader, as someone that people looked up to. I felt like I'd let people down. So there was personal failure, there was company failure, there was individual relationship failure of feeling like I let you down or like other people down. So it was hard. And like I was done, you know, I was like really burnt out and I wanted to sell the company because I'm like, people don't see it, like they don't think it's going to ever be something. I'm losing faith in it. I don't know that I can get it to be profitable. I'm not going to be able to raise money. So like, I'll just get rid of it and I'll sell it for whatever I can get. Doesn't really matter. The world on my resume will see that I got acquired and think that I'm like good as an entrepreneur. You and about, 20, 30 other people will know the real truth. But most of the world will look back on this and be like, oh, he like sold his first company, whatever. And I was like, okay, like this is painful. It fucking sucks. I hate it, but this is the way out. And so that went really well. And you weren't at the company because you got laid off during this period. But I went out and did the same process after being exhausted by the investor raise. I tried to sell, and that went really well, which was weird. And I think the reason why is because most investors, like, the meeting before is for pet food and the meeting after is for like some coconut ice cream, and right. And they don't understand like the subtleties that you understood of the hub or I understood of the hub. They're just like, oh, it's an influencer marketing plan. And it's like, no, like you don't get it really. When I tried to sell it to other competitors and things in the industry, and they understood the subtleties and they understood the vision. And so all of a sudden I was getting like validation, which was like exciting. And
And the
2 of them,
community, to me, like no one does community. Like I don't know any other company who has 40,000 creators in its roster. Like
right.
it's never
And
been done before.
and some people really liked that, right? So like one of them was a French company called Miro. And they had just raised $250 million. They were valued at $1 billion, and they could have easily just thrown me cash, like $3-4 million, boom, done. It wouldn't have been the biggest success in the world. They probably would have sort of taken us apart, and like you say, maybe it's just the community, or maybe it's just one aspect of the grand vision, but at least so Miro was interested, and another company was interested. The other company, maybe even more so, 5-6 meetings. And I was very close to getting what's called an LOI, letter of intent, which is when they're like, we have intent to buy your company. This is how much we'll pay.
Yeah.
We need to do more research, more due diligence, but like, we're ready. And that was in February of 2020. Do you know what happened in February of 2020?
The pandemic.
Yes. So they're like, there's this thing that's happening, COVID, let's just touch base again in a month when it's over, which is sort of funny. And then it became very clear that it wasn't going to be over. Miro, they fired 70% of their employees because they focused on short-term rentals and food photography, both of which got fucking killed. Restaurant photography. The other company did well, but wanted time to sort of make sure that everything was stable. And so I'm like, okay, I can't raise, I can't sell. So my last option is to become profitable and stable with the business. Yeah. And so, I broke up with my ex. I got my mental health stronger. I moved to New York. I fired a few more people, got really lean. I started consulting. That was a big turning point for me because it brought in real cash. I was bringing in $20K a month consulting, and it gave me validation that I actually know what I'm talking about, which I didn't know for sure. I frankly thought I didn't, maybe because I'd failed so much recently.
Mm-hmm.
So it helped me find my voice again and realize, like, I'm actually kind of good at this. And like, other people seem to respect my opinion, and I'm actually helping other businesses. Sometimes if the business was simpler or smaller than ours, I would advise them for a couple months and watch the growth. And I'd be like, oh, wow, like that's what that looks like. So yeah, bringing in 20K a month, fewer people, like we became profitable. So it's like, I got PPP. So all of a sudden now it's like, there's no cliff anymore. There's no gun to the back of my head. There's no panicking. I can find my voice as a chef again.
Yeah.
And I did. And we have, and we're very small, and it's humbling. It's like, I miss the days of having 15 employees. I miss the days of moving faster. I still see the full vision. I want that, but I'm sort of committed to like building it more responsibly, as opposed to jumping to that, hoping that we can like hold on for dear life. And if we don't, I have to fire everyone and burn everything to the ground and almost die and have a mental health episode. And, it's just better to build thoughtfully, slowly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually going to hire someone in the next month, and you wouldn't believe how many times I'm like double checking the numbers, like I'm like making sure that like for certain I can afford this person for a year. There's no way in the world that I fire them in less than a year, probably 2 years, but for sure they're safe for a year. This is a stable job. I'm not going to hire someone unless that's the case.
Yeah.
But that's how careful I'm being now, because I had this nightmare of having to let 9 of my friends go within a month. Like, that's just a shitty feeling.
I think it's a story of a lot of entrepreneurs. Is like to like know that also that like you not only just your work, like you're more than that, and you have to like kind of like draw a line, or like like when you have to. I was reading yesterday, so prepping for this episode and like others, I was reading the story of like this big entrepreneur who like pretty much was waiting for a huge contract, who took a lot of time to come, and like he was like running completely out of money. He was owing money for his car, for his mortgage, he was months late, and he was saying that he had like $8 in his bank account, and then the check came the next day, and he was able to pay everyone and everything. But he said that even like years later, when his company was like making millions, top 500 company, he still like was carrying the the weight of like this day when he pushed too far, even though like at the end it worked for him, you know. He said like, I'll never like allow myself to go back to this, because like almost like now, like you know, he felt that, oh, something can always happen, something can always like, you know, fuck up, and then we're gonna go back to like this like hell on earth where like we're just trying like by any means to save the company, and I
Yeah.
gotta get rid of everyone.
Listen, there are different breeds of entrepreneurship, and like the Silicon Valley breed, the SoftBank, which is like a big one of the biggest venture funds in the world out of Japan, like their attitude is like big. Um, the bigger the better. What's your vision? That's not big enough. Like you need to change the world. You need like, you know, there's this guy I love reading, Scott Galloway, and he reads the S4 filings, which are the SEC paperwork that you file when you go public. And he can predict how well a stock is going to do based on how bullshitty their opening paragraph is, which is
Yeah.
the description of the company. So like Peloton, right? Let's say Peloton, it could just be like a fitness company that makes exercise bikes, or it can be like, you know, a life-changing, you know, mission to like reconnect people with their body and soul, like right? And like and so some VCs, some founders want that like crazy vision, raise crazy money, moonshot thing. But then there are other people on the other end of the spectrum that never even raise money and just bootstrapped, or raise money but have that discipline, you know where every dollar is going. It's all muscle, it's all thoughtful, it's all brick by brick.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, like my grandparents lived through the Great Depression, you know, in the United States. And like everyone that lives through the Great Depression to this day, you know, only one of my grandparents is still alive, but she like cans food. She fucking like saves every little scrap. If I like were to, if she were to watch me throw out like something and not save it for later, she would, you know, be like, what are you doing? Because she lived through a period where they just didn't have enough, and you would have given anything for that like half-eaten shitty piece of toast that, you know, like they
Yeah.
save it. And I think when you've been through something like what we're talking about as an entrepreneur, the story you told, yeah, you get really good at knowing what muscle is and what fat is, and never putting yourself or others in the position again to lose it all.